Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, watching the massive alien space station grow larger on the view screen. The structure was beyond anything humans had ever built. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, made of materials that seemed to shift color in the starlight. Thousands of ships from different worlds floated around it like tiny insects around a giant flower. "Captain, we're receiving the docking instructions," said Lieutenant Park from the communication station. Her voice was steady, but Dae-ho could hear the nervousness underneath. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Council, and everyone knew how important it was. Dr. Park Soo-jin walked up beside him, her tablet in hand. She had been studying alien cultures for months, preparing for this moment. "The station is called Nexus Prime," she said quietly. "It's been the center of galactic government for over 50,000 years. Every major decision about the galaxy is made here." Dae-ho nodded. Behind them, Ambassador Choi Hai-won was reviewing her notes one last time. She would be doing most of the talking when they met the council. As Earth's chief diplomat, she had trained for years to handle first contact situations. But no amount of training could really prepare someone for this. The Soul's Pride slowly moved into the docking bay. The bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold 100 ships their size. Strange alien vessels of every shape and design filled the other berths. Some looked like living creatures, others like geometric puzzles made of metal and light. "Look at that one," whispered Engineer Kim, pointing at a ship that seemed to be made of pure crystal. "How does it even fly?" "Focus on our job," Dae-ho said firmly. But he was just as amazed as the rest of his crew. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Humanity was still new to space, and everything they saw here reminded them just how small they were in the galaxy. The docking process took an hour. When they finally stopped, a delegation of aliens was waiting for them at the airlock. Dr. Park Soo-jin had shown them pictures, but seeing real aliens in person was still shocking. There were tall beings that looked like walking trees, small creatures covered in fur, and others that seemed to be made of living metal. The leader of the group stepped forward. It was humanoid, but much taller than any human, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. When it spoke, a small device on its chest translated the words into perfect English. "Welcome, representatives of Earth. I am Coordinator Zeftel. The Council has been waiting to meet your species. Please follow me." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls showed moving pictures of different worlds and civilizations. Dr. Park Soo-jin tried to take notes on everything she saw, but there was too much to record. Ambassador Choi stayed close to Captain Dae-ho, whispering observations about the aliens they passed. "Notice how they all seem calm," she said. "Almost too calm. Like they've never had to fight for anything." Dae-ho had noticed the same thing. In his years in the military, he had learned to read people quickly. These aliens moved like beings who had never known real conflict. It was strange to see in a government that ruled an entire galaxy. Finally, they reached the council chamber. The room was vast beyond belief. Thousands of aliens sat in floating platforms arranged in a perfect circle. At the center was a raised platform where the most important council members sat. The being in the middle was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It was at least 4 meters tall and seemed to be made of living crystal. Light moved through its body in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, its voice echoed through the chamber without any need for translation devices. "I am Council Speaker Velthek," it said. "I have governed this council for 3,000 of your Earth years. You are the representatives of the species called humans from the world. You call Earth." "That's correct," Ambassador Choi said, stepping forward. "We're honored to meet the council and hope to establish peaceful relations with all galactic civilizations." A sound like wind chimes came from speaker Velfik. Dr. Park Soo-jin realized it might be laughter, though not the kind humans would. Recognize. Peaceful relations, Velfik repeated. Yes, all new species wish for peace. And peace is what the Council provides. For 50,000 years, we have maintained order in this galaxy. We have prevented wars, ended conflicts, and brought prosperity to all worlds under our guidance. The way it said guidance made Captain Daiho uncomfortable. It sounded more like control than help. However, Velfak continued, peace and order require sacrifice. Every species that joins the galactic community must prove their commitment to the greater good. This is done through the tribute system, which has served us well for millennia. Ambassador Choi glanced at Dr. Park Soo-jin. They had expected some kind of membership requirements, but the word tribute was concerning. What exactly does this tribute involve? Choi asked carefully. For the first 500 years of membership, new species must contribute to the Council's great works, Velfek explained. 60% of your population will be relocated to assist with essential projects throughout the galaxy. Additionally, 80% of your world's resources will be directed to Council use each year. The chamber went completely silent. Captain Daiho felt his blood turn cold. Dr. Park Soo-jin dropped her tablet, and it clattered on the floor. Ambassador Choi stood frozen, unable to speak. I am sorry, Choi finally managed. Did you say 60% of our population? That is correct, Velfek said, as if discussing the weather. Your people will be well cared for and given meaningful work. Many will help build new worlds, others will serve in resource extraction, and some will assist in maintaining order among less cooperative species. You're talking about slavery, Captain Daiho said, stepping forward. His hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless here. Another wind chime sound from Velfek. Such a crude word. We prefer guided service. Your species will learn much during this period. Those who prove themselves worthy may even earn early privileges. Dr. Park Soo-jin found her voice. And if we refuse? The crystal being's light patterns shifted to darker colors. Around the chamber, thousands of alien representatives watched in silence. Most looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. No species has refused in 50,000 years, Velfek said slowly. But I can show you what happened to the last civilization that ... misunderstood their obligations. The chamber's walls suddenly displayed images that made the humans gasp in horror. A beautiful blue-green world appeared, covered in cities and forests. Then came the ships, massive council vessels that surrounded the planet. In moments, the entire surface was covered in white-hot fire. When the flames cleared, nothing remained but a ball of smooth glass. The Kethmer were a proud species, Velfak explained while the images continued to play. They had built a great civilization and thought themselves above the tribute system. This was their world Keth Prime. It now serves as a memorial to the importance of cooperation. Ambassador Choi was pale, but kept her voice steady. How long do we have to decide? 30 of your Earth days, Velfik said. Return with your answer. Your ships will be allowed safe passage during this time, as is traditional. But remember, the Council has maintained peace for 50 millennia. We will not allow one young species to disrupt the order that has served so many worlds so well. The meeting was over. Coordinator Zeph Tal led them back to their ship in silence. None of the humans spoke until they were safely aboard the Soul's Pride and undocking from the station dot. As Nexus Prime grew smaller behind them, Captain Daiho finally broke the silence. Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. What? Are you going to tell them? Dr. Park Soo-jin asked. Daiho looked out at the stars. thinking of the 6 billion people on Earth who had no idea what choice they were about to face. The truth, he said. And then we let humanity decide what we're made of. The emergency session of the United Earth Assembly had been going for 18 hours straight. President Yoon Jae-sung sat at the head of the massive table, looking at the faces of world leaders who seemed to have aged years in just 2 days. The Soul's Pride had returned with news that changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said Chancellor Mueller from the European Federation. "These aliens want 60% of our population as slaves and 80% of our resources for 500 years. "That's correct," Ambassador Choi Hai-won replied from the main screen. She was still aboard the Soul's Pride, which remained in orbit above Earth. "And if we refuse, they'll turn Earth into glass, just like they did to the Kethner homeworld." General Oh Min-seo slammed her fist on the table. 6 billion people. They want us to hand over 6 billion people like we're trading cattle. "The alternative is 10 billion dead people," said Prime Minister Chun from the Asian Coalition. "At least with the tribute system, most of humanity survives." Dr. Park Soo-jin's image appeared on another screen. She had been analyzing data from their visit to Nexus Prime non-stop since their return. "I've been studying everything we recorded about the Council species. There's something important you all need to understand. These aliens aren't like us." "What do you mean?" President Yoon asked. "I mean, they're naturally peaceful. Almost every species we encountered evolved from prey animals or peaceful herbivores. They've never had to fight for survival the way humans did. The concept of total war is completely foreign to them." Admiral Kim Tae-woo, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. "Are you saying they might not be as tough as they appear?" "I'm saying they've never faced a species like humanity. We're the product of millions of years of evolution as hunters and survivors. Most of these aliens probably can't even imagine the kind of violence humans are capable of." The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Finally, President Yoon spoke. "Even if that's true, you saw what they did to that planet. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours." Dr. Bae Won-ho entered the chamber at that moment, carrying a sealed briefcase. As Director of Advanced Weapons Research, he had been working around the clock since the Soul's Pride returned. "Actually, Mr. President, that might not be as big a problem as we thought." All eyes turned to him as he set the briefcase on the table. "For the past 3 years, we've been working on Project Defiance. It was originally designed as a defense against potential hostile aliens. I never thought we'd actually need it." He opened the briefcase, revealing data tablets and holographic projectors. "We've developed weapons that work on principles these aliens have never encountered. Quantum disruptors that can tear apart their energy shields. Reality bombs that create temporary holes in space-time. Ships that can fold themselves through dimensions." "You're talking about fighting the entire galaxy," Chancellor Mueller said in disbelief. "I'm talking about fighting smart," Bay replied. "The Council has been the only power in the galaxy for 50,000 years. They've never had to innovate, never had to adapt, never had to face real opposition. They're probably using the same tactics and weapons they used millennia ago." Captain Shin Yuri, who had been listening from her position near the wall, stepped forward. "Sir, I've been analyzing the footage from Nexus Prime. Their ships are massive and powerful, but they move like cargo haulers, not warships. I don't think they've fought a real space battle in thousands of years." President Yoon looked around the room at faces filled with hope and terror in equal measure. "You're all talking about war with beings who can destroy planets. We're talking about freedom," General O said firmly. "Mr. President, I've spent my entire career preparing to defend Earth. I never imagined the threat would come from space, but the principle remains the same. We don't negotiate with slavers. Admiral Kim nodded in agreement. Our deep space scouts have been watching their fleet movements since we returned. They're powerful, but they're also predictable. They move in formation, follow standard patterns, and seem to assume their enemies will do the same. Dr. Park Soo-jin's voice came through the speakers again. There's something else. While we were at Nexus Prime, I noticed that many of the smaller species looked ... scared. Not of us, but of the Council. I think there are civilizations that would support us if they thought we had a chance. Support us in what? President Yoon asked. Suicide? Support us in showing the galaxy that the Council isn't invincible, Captain Shin replied. Sir, humans have never been the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest species on Earth, but we survived and thrived because we adapted. We learned. We never gave up. The debate continued for hours. Representatives from every nation, every military branch, and every major organization on Earth joined the discussion. Some argued for submission, believing that survival was more important than freedom. Others demanded resistance, saying that a life of slavery wasn't worth living. Finally, Dr. Bae Won-ho stood up again. I want to show you all something. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. It showed a detailed analysis of the Council's pacification fleet, the same ships that had destroyed the Kethmer homeworld. Look at these. Energy signatures, he said, pointing to various parts of the ships. These vessels are ancient. They're powerful, yes, but they're also showing signs of age and neglect. The Council has been using fear and reputation to maintain control for so long that they've forgotten how to actually fight. And you think we can take advantage of that? President Yoon asked. I think we can surprise them. They expect new species to either submit immediately or offer token resistance before surrendering. They've never faced a species that would rather die fighting than live as slaves. The room erupted in arguments again, but President Yoon raised his hand for silence. I need to make a decision that will affect every human being alive, and billions more who haven't been born yet. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each leader. But this isn't really my choice to make. It belongs to all of humanity. General O frowned. Sir, we don't have time for a global referendum. The Council gave us 30 days. Then we use every one of those days, Yoon replied. I want every human on Earth to understand what we're facing. I want them to see the footage from Nexus Prime. I want them to know exactly what the Council is demanding. And then I want them to choose. Admiral Kim looked concerned. Mr. President, if we're going to fight, we need to start preparing now. Every day we delay is a day the Council thinks we're getting weaker, President Yoon finished. But it's also a day we're getting stronger. Dr. Bae, how quickly can you mass-produce these new weapons? With full global cooperation? We could have a basic defense ready in 3 weeks. Then do it, but quietly. Let the Council think we're debating surrender while we prepare for war. Captain Shin smiled grimly. A surprise attack. They won't expect that from a primitive species. More than that, Dr. Park Soo-jin added from the screen. They won't expect us to fight for other species, too. The Council thinks in terms of individual civilizations looking out for themselves. They can't imagine a species that would fight to free strangers. President Yoon stood up, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Then let's show them what humanity is really made of. But first, let's make sure humanity chooses this path with their eyes wide open. As the leaders dispersed to begin, the greatest mobilization in human history, one thought echoed in every mind. In 30 days, humanity would give the Galactic Council an answer that would change the galaxy forever. The 30 days passed faster than anyone expected. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood once again on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, but this time everything was different. The ship had been upgraded with Dr. Bei Wonho's new weapon systems. Hidden throughout, the hull were quantum disruptors that could tear through alien energy shields like paper. The crew was tense but determined. Behind Earth, a massive fleet waited in the shadow of the moon. Over 300 ships had been built or modified in just 4 weeks. They were smaller than the Council's massive vessels, but they carried weapons that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Admiral Kim Tae-woo commanded the fleet from the flagship Indomitable, while Captain Shin Yu-ri led the fighter squadrons. The global vote had been closer than anyone expected. 57% of humanity chose to fight rather than surrender. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was enough. President Yoon Jae-sung had addressed the world one final time before the Soul's Pride departed for Nexus Prime. "We go not as conquerors, but as free beings who refuse to kneel," he had said. "Whatever happens next, let the galaxy know that Earth chose freedom." Now, as Nexus Prime grew larger on the view screen, Captain Daeho felt the weight of 10 billion lives resting on his shoulders. Dr. Park Soo-jin stood beside him, but this time she wasn't carrying research tablets. Instead, she wore the blue uniform of Earth's new diplomatic corps, specially designed for this moment. "Captain, we're being hailed by the station," reported Lieutenant Park from communications. "Put them through," Daeho replied. Coordinator Ziftal's face appeared on the screen. The alien looked exactly the same as before, calm and confident. "Welcome back, humans. The Council is eager to hear your decision. We have prepared transport ships to begin collecting your tribute immediately after your acceptance." Daeho kept his expression neutral. "We're ready to give our answer to the full Council." "Excellent. You may dock in the same bay as before." As the Soul's Pride moved toward the docking bay, Dr. Park Soo-jin noticed something different about the station. "There are more ships here than last time," she observed quietly. Through the viewports, they could see hundreds of additional vessels surrounding Nexus Prime. These weren't the usual mix of alien ships they had seen before. They were all military vessels, clearly designed for war rather than exploration or trade. "The Council isn't taking any chances," Ambassador Choi Hai-won said. "They brought their fleet." "Good," Daeho replied. "It will save us the trouble of hunting them down later." The docking process seemed to take forever. When they finally stopped, the same group of aliens was waiting for them, but this time they were accompanied by what looked like guards. Tall, armored beings carrying energy weapons flanked Coordinator Zeftal. "An escort coordinator?" Ambassador Choi asked as they walked through the corridors. "A precaution," Zeftal replied. "Some Council members expressed concern about your species' primitive nature. They worried you might react emotionally to the formal acceptance ceremony." Dr. Park Soo-jin noticed that the corridors seemed different too. Where before they had seen aliens going about their daily business, now the halls were filled with security forces. The Council was clearly expecting trouble, even though they believed humanity would surrender. The Council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled, and additional platforms had been added to accommodate representatives from species that rarely attended regular sessions. Thousands upon thousands of aliens watched as the human delegation entered. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. Council Speaker Velthek stood at the center, its crystalline body glowing brighter than before. "Representatives of Earth," it announced, its voice echoing through the chamber, "you return at the end of the traditional 30-day consideration period. The Council has prepared to receive your formal acceptance of tributary status." "Captain." Daeho stepped forward. Behind him, his small delegation stood straight and proud. Dr. Park Soo-jin had explained that in many alien cultures, posture and body language conveyed important messages. The humans wanted to send a very clear message. "We have considered your offer carefully," Daeho said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Humanity has debated, discussed, and voted on the future you propose for our species. A pleased sound came from Speaker Velthek. Around the chamber, alien representatives shifted in their seats, preparing to witness another species submit to council authority. We have studied your tribute system, Deho continued. We have examined the fate of species who accepted it, and those who refused. We have looked at 50,000 years of galactic history under council rule. And you have seen the wisdom of cooperation, Velthek said with satisfaction. Very good. Please state formally your species' acceptance of tributary status so that we may begin the transition process. The chamber fell completely silent. Captain Deho looked up at the thousands of alien faces watching him. Some looked bored, as if this was just another routine surrender. Others seemed almost sympathetic, remembering perhaps when their own worlds had faced the same choice centuries or millennia ago. Humanity has reached a decision, Deho said clearly. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Our answer is no. The single word hit the chamber like a physical blow. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Aliens began talking all at once in dozens of different languages. Some jumped to their feet. Others seemed to shrink back in their seats. The sound was deafening. Speaker Velthok's crystal body flashed brilliant red. Silence, it roared, and the chamber instantly went quiet. Did you say no? That's correct, Deho replied. Humanity rejects your tribute system. We refuse to surrender our people as slaves. We refuse to strip our world bare for your benefit. We choose freedom. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't the quiet of anticipation, but the stunned hush of beings who had just witnessed something impossible. Many of the aliens looked confused, as if they couldn't understand the words they had just heard. In 50,000 years, Velthek said slowly, no species has ever refused the tribute system. Then it's about time someone did, Dr. Park Sujin said. Stepping up beside her, Captain. Speaker Velthok's body pulsed with angry red light. You do not understand what you are choosing. We showed you the fate of the Kethmer. We showed you what happens to species who oppose the council. We saw what you did to beings who couldn't fight back, Ambassador Choi replied. But we're not the Kethmer. Around the chamber, security forces began moving toward the human delegation. Energy weapons powered up with distinctive whining sounds. But Captain Deho and his team didn't move or show any fear. You would choose death over service? Velthek demanded. We choose freedom over slavery, Deho answered. And we're not just choosing for ourselves. He gestured toward the thousands of alien representatives watching the scene. How many of your so-called member species actually chose to join? How many were given the same ultimatum we received? How many entire civilizations live as slaves because they were too afraid to say no? Some of the aliens in the chamber began looking at each other uncertainly. A few even nodded slightly, remembering their own species' first encounter with the Council. You have made your choice, Velthek declared. The pacification fleet will depart for Earth immediately. Your world will share the fate of Keth Prime. No, said Captain Deho. It won't. He touched a small device on his collar. Instantly, alarms began blaring throughout Nexus Prime. Emergency lights flashed as the station's sensors detected what was happening in the space around them. The massive view screens around the chamber activated, showing the space outside Nexus Prime. The Council's pacification fleet was there, just as Velthok had threatened. Hundreds of enormous warships floated in perfect formation, ready to carry out another extermination. But they weren't alone. Emerging from behind asteroids, from the shadows of moons, and from the dark spaces between stars, came Earth's fleet. 300 human ships materialized as their cloaking devices deactivated. They were smaller than the Council vessels, but there were many of them, and they moved with a speed and precision that the galaxy had never seen before. "Impossible," whispered Coordinator Zeftel. "How did they get so close without being detected?" "Captain." Shin Yuri's voice came through the communication system, speaking directly to the council chamber. "Because we've been learning your technology while you've been ignoring ours. This is Captain Shin Yuri of the Earth Defense Fleet. Council ships, you are ordered to stand down immediately." The response from the pacification fleet was predictable. The council ships opened fire, their massive energy weapons lighting up space with deadly beams. But when the light faded, the human ships were still there, protected by energy shields that bent and absorbed the alien attack's dot. Then humanity fired back. The quantum disruptors tore through the council ships' shields like they weren't there. Reality bombs created holes in space that swallowed entire vessels. Human fighters, moving faster than anything the aliens had ever seen, danced between the massive enemy ships, striking at weak points with surgical precision dot in the council chamber. Thousands of aliens watched in stunned silence as their supposedly invincible fleet began to fall apart. The battle around Nexus Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Council ships that had terrorized civilizations for thousands of years were being torn apart by human weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Captain. Shin Yuri led her fighter squadron through the chaos, her ship dancing between energy beams that could have vaporized entire cities. "Dragon Squad, target the command ship's engine pods," she ordered through her communicator. "Phoenix Squad, hit their weapon arrays. Let's show them what happens when you threaten Earth." Her fighters moved like nothing the Council forces had ever faced. Instead of flying in neat formations like civilized species, they swarmed and attacked from impossible angles. The aliens had spent 50,000 years fighting enemies who followed predictable patterns. Humans fought like the predators they had evolved from. Commander Lim Dong-jun watched the battle from the bridge of his experimental ship, the Indomitable. The vessel was barely a quarter the size of the Council dreadnoughts, but it carried weapons that Dr. Bei Wonho had only finished building a week ago. Reality warping drives, quantum torpedo launchers, and something called a temporal disruptor that could freeze enemy ships in time. "Sir, 3 Council ships are moving to flank us," reported his tactical officer. "Let them come," Lim said calmly. "Engineer Park, are the new systems ready?" Engineer Park Ji-woo looked up from her console, sweat beading on her forehead. She had been working non-stop for months to perfect humanity's adaptive combat AI. The system could learn enemy tactics in real time and develop counters faster than any organic mind could think. "AI is online and learning, sir. It's already identified 17 weaknesses in Council ship designs." "Good. Target the lead ship and fire everything we have." The Indomitable unleashed a barrage that defied understanding. Quantum torpedoes phased through the enemy's shields as if they weren't there. The temporal disruptor created a bubble of slowed time around one ship, making it an easy target. The reality warping drive let the Indomitable appear in 3 different places at once, confusing the Council gunners completely. When the attack was over, 3 massive Council dreadnoughts were nothing but debris floating in space. The Indomitable hadn't taken a single hit. On the surface of a nearby planet, Sergeant Kong So-young led her ground forces in an assault that the local Council garrison couldn't understand. The planet Veltros had been a Council stronghold for over 2,000 years. Its defenders had never faced a real attack, only occasional protests from enslaved populations that were easily put down. Humans fought differently. "Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth," Kong told her soldiers as they prepared for the assault. "We're fighting for every species that's been enslaved by these bastards." Her troops moved through the alien city like ghosts, instead of charging straight at the enemy positions like other species did. They used stealth, misdirection, and psychological warfare. They planted speakers that broadcast terrifying human war cries in the darkness. They used holographic projectors to make it seem like there were thousands of them when there were only hundreds. The council guards, who had never experienced real fear in their lives, began to panic. They fired at shadows and retreated from empty buildings. Some abandoned their posts entirely, something that hadn't happened in the council military for millennia. "This is impossible," whispered Commander Kelvar, the alien in charge of defending the city. "How are they everywhere at once?" His question was answered when Sergeant Kong appeared behind him in his own command center. He had no idea how she had gotten past his guards, through his security systems, and into his supposedly impregnable bunker. "Because we've been hunting and fighting for millions of years," she said quietly. "You've been sitting in luxury and giving orders. There's a difference." Within 6 hours, the entire planet was under human control. The council garrison had surrendered without losing a single human life. More importantly, the 3 million enslaved aliens on the planet were free for the first time in their lives. In space, the tide of battle was turning into a complete rout. Admiral Kim Tae-woo coordinated the fleet from his flagship, watching as council forces that had seemed invincible just hours ago fled in panic. Human ships pursued them relentlessly, not to destroy them all, but to make sure they spread the word about what they had seen. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 council ships," reported his communications officer. "Accept them all," Kim replied, "but make sure they understand the terms. Any ship that surrenders gets safe passage home, but they also get to carry a message." The message was simple but revolutionary. Humanity wasn't just fighting the council. They were offering an alternative. Any species that wanted freedom could join the newly formed Free Species Alliance. There would be no tribute, no slavery, no forced service. Just cooperation between equals. Dr. Park Soo-jin, still aboard the Soul's Pride near Nexus Prime, monitored communications from across the galaxy. What she was seeing amazed her. Word of humanity's victory was spreading faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication networks that the council had built to maintain control. "Captain, you need to see this," she called to Dae-ho. On her screen were reports from dozens of star systems. On the mining world of Kreshtar, enslaved workers had stopped working and were demanding freedom. On the agricultural planet Yelanim, entire cities were refusing to send their food shipments to council worlds. On the industrial world of Morthic, factory workers were building weapons instead of luxury goods for their alien masters. "It's spreading," Dr. Park said with wonder in her voice. "The rebellion is spreading across the entire galaxy." But the most shocking news came from the council chamber itself. As human forces secured Nexus Prime, something unprecedented was happening inside. Species representatives who had sat in silent obedience for centuries were finally speaking up. "We demand to know how many of our people have died in council service," called out a delegate from the reptilian sectar species. "Why were we never told about the fate of species who refused tribute?" asked a representative of the bird-like Velkari. "How many worlds like Keth Prime have been destroyed to maintain your peace?" demanded a speaker for the aquatic Mordun speaker. Velthic's crystalline body flickered with unstable light patterns. For 50,000 years, the council had maintained order through fear and the illusion of invincibility. But humanity had shattered that illusion in a single battle. "Order," Velthok commanded, but its voice lacked the authority it once held. "The council will not tolerate this disruption. The council will answer for its crimes," Captain Dae-ho said, entering the chamber with a squad of human marines. "Every species that wants to leave your so-called alliance is free to go. Every enslaved population will be liberated. Every world that wants independence will get it." Around the chamber, alien representatives were standing up and walking out. Some moved hesitantly, as if they couldn't believe they were really free to leave. Others marched out with determination, finally able to express the anger they had hidden for generations. "Commander," Lim Dongshun's voice came through the communication system with a battle report that stunned everyone listening. "Admiral, the Council's main fleet is in full retreat. We've captured or destroyed over 60% of their ships. The rest are fleeing to their home systems." But perhaps the most important news came from engineer Park Ji-woo, whose adaptive AI had been analyzing Council technology throughout the battle. "Sir, I've got something incredible here. The Council's computer networks are completely open. They never expected anyone to hack them, because no one ever tried before. I'm downloading everything. Every record, every secret, every hidden atrocity from 50,000 years of rule." Dr. Park Soo-jin realized what this meant. "We'll have proof of everything they've done. Every species they've enslaved, every world they've destroyed, every lie they've told. The entire galaxy will know the truth." As human forces secured system after system, a pattern emerged that amazed even the humans themselves. They weren't just winning battles. They were liberating entire civilizations that had forgotten what freedom looked like. Species that had been enslaved for so long they had given up hope were suddenly free to determine their own futures. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of that change was humanity's simple but powerful message. No one has to kneel. No one has to pay tribute. No one has to live as a slave. The Council's 50,000-year reign of fear was ending, brought down by a species that had learned one crucial lesson in their evolution. Sometimes, the only answer to tyranny is a word that tyrants never expect to hear. No. 6 months after the Battle of Nexus Prime, the galaxy looked completely different. Admiral Lee Dae-ho, promoted after leading humanity's diplomatic mission, stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt station, now called Freedom Station. Through the massive windows, he could see ships from hundreds of different species coming and going freely. No one asked for tribute. No one demanded service. They came because they wanted to be there. The transformation had been faster than anyone expected. Within weeks of the Council's defeat, over 300 species had declared their independence. The tribute system that had enslaved entire worlds for 50,000 years collapsed almost overnight. But freedom, it turned out, was easier to win than to manage. Dr. Park Soo-jin walked up beside him, carrying a tablet filled with reports from across the galaxy. As Director of Interspecies Relations, she had spent the last 6 months helping newly freed civilizations figure out how to govern themselves again. "How are the negotiations going?" Dae-ho asked. "Better than expected," she replied. "The Kreshtar have established their first democratic government in 3,000 years. The Velkari are rebuilding their homeworld. The Mordan are cleaning their oceans for the first time since the Council polluted them for industrial use." She paused, scrolling through more reports. "But it's not all good news. Some species don't know how to be free anymore. They keep asking us what they should do, as if we're the new Council." This had been one of humanity's biggest challenges. Many species had lived under Council rule for so long that they had forgotten how to make their own decisions. They looked to humans for guidance, not understanding that freedom meant choosing their own path. Director Han Woo-jin entered the observation area, wearing the simple blue uniform of the Free Species Alliance. As head of the new organization, he had worked tirelessly to create something that had never existed before: a galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination. "The morning briefing is ready," he said. "We've got some interesting developments." They walked to the main conference room, where representatives from dozens of species were gathered. The room looked nothing like the old Council chamber. Instead of elevated platforms and formal hierarchies, everyone sat at the same level around circular tables. The message was clear. No one species was more important than another. Captain Moon Hayren, now commanding the Alliance peacekeeping forces, stood to give her report. We've completed the liberation of the last Council slave camps in the Outer Rim. That's over 50 million beings freed in the past month alone. The numbers were staggering. As engineer Park Ji-woo's data analysis had revealed the full scope of the Council's crimes, liberation teams had found slave camps, mining operations, and factory worlds scattered throughout the galaxy. Entire generations had been born and died in service to the Council without ever seeing their homeworlds. What about the Council leadership? Asked Ambassador Choi Hai-won, who now served as humanity's primary representative to the Alliance. Most have retreated to their core worlds, Moon replied. They're not causing trouble anymore, but they're also not cooperating with truth and reconciliation efforts. This had been another challenge. Humanity could have hunted down every Council leader and made them pay for their crimes. But Dr. Park Soo-jin had convinced the Alliance to try a different approach. They offered amnesty to any Council member who helped rebuild the galaxy and made amends for past wrongs. Some had accepted. Many had not. Speaking of the old Council worlds, Han said, we've received an interesting communication. He activated the room's holographic display, showing the image of Speaker Velfak. The crystalline being looked much smaller and dimmer than before, its light patterns subdued and hesitant. People of the galaxy, Velfak began, I speak to you from Crystal Prime, the homeworld of my species. For 50,000 years, the Council believed we were bringing order and peace to the galaxy. We were wrong. The recorded message continued, and the room fell silent as they listened to something no one had ever expected to hear, an apology from the former ruler of the galaxy. We convinced ourselves that other species needed our guidance, that they were too primitive to govern themselves. We told ourselves that the tribute system was necessary for the greater good. But the humans have shown us the truth. We were simply afraid. Velfak's image flickered, and for a moment its crystalline body showed cracks that hadn't been there before. We were afraid that if we allowed true freedom, the galaxy would fall into chaos and war. So we chose the certainty of oppression over the uncertainty of liberty. We made the galaxy safe by making it a prison. The message ended with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Humanity has proven that free beings can choose cooperation over conflict, that different species can work together as equals. They have built something we never could, a galaxy where no one kneels, no world pays tribute, and no being is enslaved. This is our apology and our promise to do better. The room remained quiet for several moments after the message ended. Finally, a representative from the Kreshtar species spoke up. Do we trust them? She asked. We verify, Captain Moon replied. Trust is earned through actions, not words. The discussion that followed showed how much the galaxy had changed. Instead of one voice making decisions for everyone, dozens of species debated and discussed until they reached a consensus. It was messy and sometimes took longer than anyone wanted, but it was their choice to make as the meeting continued. Dr. Park Soo-jin thought about how far they had all come. The Council's defeat had been just the beginning. Building a free galaxy was harder than winning the war, but it was also more rewarding. Later that day, she walked through the civilian sections of Freedom Station, the corridors that had once been filled with fearful aliens following strict protocols, now buzzed with activity. Children from a dozen different species played together while their parents traded goods, shared stories, and made plans for the future. She stopped at one of the viewing ports and watched a group of young aliens looking out at the stars. One of them, a small creature with fur and large eyes from the recently liberated world of Puftel, tugged on her uniform. Excuse me, the child said in halting but determined English. My teacher says humans fought to free people they never met. Why did you do that? Dr. Park knelt down to meet the child's eyes. It was a question she had been asked many times over the past 6 months, and she still wasn't sure she had the perfect answer. Because it was right, she said simply. Because everyone deserves to be free, no matter where they come from or what they look like. The child thought about this for a moment, then nodded seriously. When I grow up, I want to help free people too. As Dr. Park watched the children return to their stargazing, she realized that this was humanity's real victory. Not the military defeat of the Council, but the idea they had planted throughout the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for, that no one had to accept oppression as natural, and that different species could work together as equals. The free species alliance was still growing. Every month brought new worlds that wanted to join, new civilizations that had heard about the galaxy where no one paid tribute. There were challenges and setbacks, disagreements and difficulties. But there was also hope, something the galaxy hadn't seen for 50,000 years. Admiral Deho joined her at the viewing port, looking out at the stars where free ships traveled between free worlds. Any regrets? He asked. Dr. Park smiled, thinking of that moment 6 months ago when humanity had been faced with an impossible choice between slavery and death. They had chosen a third option that no one thought existed. None, she said. We gave them the only answer we could. In the distance, a ship departed for the outer rim, carrying medical supplies to newly freed worlds. Another arrived from the sea. Core systems, bringing teachers to help former slaves learn to read and write in their own languages again. Trade ships, exploration vessels, and diplomatic missions moved freely between worlds that had been isolated for millennia. The galaxy was healing, and at the center of that healing was humanity's simple but revolutionary message. Sometimes the most powerful word in any language is no, especially when it's followed by the determination to build something better. The Galactic Council had demanded tribute and expected submission. Humanity had answered with defiance and delivered freedom, not just for themselves, but for every being who had forgotten what it meant to choose their own destiny. The age of tribute was over. The age of freedom had begun.